I'm going to be honest, this episode wasn't my favorite. The scenes between Helen and Daniel felt a little too long for me. I kept waiting for them to finally reach their destination so we can move the story forward. Welcome back to the dark side, where we explore horror and science fiction through real science, psychology, mythology, and hidden meanings. Today I'm discussing Silo, Episode 6. So now we know Helen's role goes way beyond just being a reporter. And let's be honest, we all knew something was eventually going to happen between Helen and Daniel. They clearly have feelings for each other, but I think the past dispenser is becoming much more important than we originally thought. To me, it represents the beginning of this bloodline, the descendants and the legacy these characters are creating. And at the end of the day, so much of Silo is about remembering the people you love and remembering what you're fighting for. And we're already seeing that through characters like Gloria, the birth advisor, George Wilkins' mother, and Juliet's mother, Hannah Nichols. They were all connected to this hidden lineage in some way. You know the saying, history repeats itself? Helen finally tells Daniel what happened to her career at the Washington Post. She wrote an explosive story about drug addiction in Congress, but one of her anonymous sources ended up being exposed. To protect that person, Helen claimed she had made the source up, basically destroying her own career in the process.
You gave up your career to protect a source.
I gave up my career because I failed Jillian. If I'd done a better job, her name would have never come up.
But I do have one question that stuck with me throughout the entire episode. Why didn't Daniel already know about this?
What happened?
Really didn't look it up.
I just saw there was some thing at the Post.
Daniel is literally a congressman. Even if he was serving in the military when everything happened, you would think a story involving drug addiction in Congress and a reporter losing her career over an anonymous source would have made some serious noise and headlines in Washington. Now, let me ask you guys something. Do you think Camille is becoming a much more compelling antagonist than Bernard or Sims? Because Bernard and Sims were more conventionally villains. They were cold, vindictive, and very direct about what they were willing to do. Camille feels different. She almost becoming a tragic character because from her perspective, she doesn't really believe she has a choice. She trusts the algorithm because she believes this disembodied voice has the power to kill everyone she loves. And that brings me to one of the most interesting scenes in the episode, the conversation between Camille and the algorithm. For me, this scene only made me more convinced. I've been saying this since day one. There is something emotional behind that voice. Someone is making human judgment. Camille storms into the vault, clearly overwhelmed by everything happening around her, and tells the algorithm, I think it's a mistake. Normally, the algorithm responds almost immediately, but this time, nothing. There's about 10 seconds of silence.
I think it's a mistake. Hello? You there?
Algorithm responds, what is a mistake? And listen to the way it says it. For a second, the voice almost sounds irritated, confused, or maybe even annoyed. Camille noticed it too, and you can see that little moment of confusion on her face. That didn't sound like some emotionless computer simply processing information. That sounded personal. I've mentioned before that I believe Victor could somehow be connected to the voice of the algorithm. I also brought up Daniel, but I never really went deep into that theory because I didn't have enough of a reason to explain why Daniel would be behind it. But this episode may have finally showed its hand. The algorithm doesn't just give basic data-driven instructions. It adjusts its decisions depending on the person it's dealing with. It appears to take things personally. It makes it political decisions. It manipulates people. And it has even shown that it can deceive someone and intentionally lead them into a trap. For example, the algorithm convinced Juliet that it is giving her an opportunity to save her people by allowing Lucas Cal and Patrick Kennedy to travel to Silo 17. But the way it makes complicated political decisions, giving people just enough hope to keep them cooperative while quietly removing threats, doesn't feel like the type of AI we knew today. And that's where Daniel starts becoming really interesting to me. Daniel's political background could explain why the algorithm operates the way it does. People enough to make them believe they have a choice while still controlling the outcome. The more I watch, the more I think the show may be leaving clues that Daniel King could somehow be connected to the voice behind the algorithm. But if Daniel really is behind it, then I think the bigger mystery becomes something else. What happened to him? How does the Daniel we're watching now, the congressman who still appears to have compassion and humanity, eventually become something capable of controlling generations of people inside the silos? What happened between these 2 points in time that changed him that much? Because if Daniel really is the voice behind the algorithm, then somewhere along the way, this man lost a major part of his humanity. I want to discuss how Camille had already started pumping the vitamin D plus into the water supply 2 hours in advance. You would think that people who have lived underground their entire lives with no natural sunlight wouldn't question being given vitamin supplements. If someone tells you they're adding vitamin D to the water because you never see the sun, that actually sounds completely reasonable. And that makes me wonder if vitamin D plus was introduced when people first entered the silos. It would be the perfect cover. People would believe they were receiving a concentrated vitamin they desperately needed while adjusting to life underground without ever questioning what really being put into the water. That immediately made me think about the MK Ultra. Under the CIA's MK Ultra program, researchers experiment with drugs and mid-altering substance, sometimes on people who did not know they were part of an experiment. LSD and other substances were studied to see how they could affect behavior, perception, and memory. Now, I'm not saying Silo is directly copying MK Ultra, but the similarity that caught my attention is the idea of giving people one explanation for what they're receiving while the real purpose is something completely different. And in Silo, calling it vitamin D plus will be the perfect way to keep people from questioning it. Then we move back to Sheriff Paul and Deputy Hank as they continue investigating Orla Kent's murder, which is now connected to the shortage of critical supply that could eventually put the entire silo at risk. And we get 2 major developments. First, they discover IT's forbidden camera room. But even more interesting is the footage involving Caller's former shadow, Glenda Harwood. According to what they're seeing, Glenda somehow travels from the mines to supply less than 10 minutes. That shouldn't be possible at all. So either Glenda has access to some kind of hidden passageway in the mines, which Lucas Cal actually mentioned in the episode.
There are 2 lines. One goes to IT and the other goes to judicial. And I didn't know what the lines were, but that's why I went to the mines.
Or somebody is doctoring that footage. And I do think Glenda is involved in Orla's murder. Absolutely. But I still don't think she did this alone. I believe her father is involved too. Now, I know when I had read the comments of the last video that I did, everybody said it's the boyfriend, but I disagree. I don't think it's the boyfriend at all. And I understand what you guys are saying, that, you know, it'll be too obvious if it's Glenda or Glenda's father, but I'm sorry, it has to be them too. Not to mention Knox's father, a connection to his notorious father, a miner by day and smuggler by night who abandoned Knox and his mom. But when Knox travels to the mines only to learn that his dad died 2 years earlier, which I don't believe. Episode 6 was a little slow, but I didn't hate it. It was just more slow paced than I expected, okay? Let me know your theories about episode 6 in the comments below. I also will be covering Dark Matter season 2, which I cannot wait. And I also have some other TV shows and movies that I will be covering soon, so please be on the lookout for that. As always, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.